All right. Hello, everybody. This is John English. I am the director of the art department. And today we have a lecture that we are featuring Marshall Vandruff. Marshall started his career in 1980 as a freelance illustrator. He's worked for a Mad magazine. He recently did some great stuff for Image and Effects magazine. He's just established himself as an artist that understands the industry, but what he's done, I think, better than anybody is he's established himself as an educator. And Marshall has been an educator with us, has been with us from the beginning of the art department, and I'm really proud to have him on our team. And I'm proud to say, Marshall, here, take the room and do what you do so well.
Okay. How do I get my slides up here? I've got my PDF loaded. Do I hit stop sharing?
It stops sharing.
That's correct.
It stops sharing. And then I hit share my screen and share document. And it's right there waiting for me as a previously uploaded document. And hit OK. And go to the top. Are we up at the top? Let's do it. We're almost here. There we are. Do you all, well, there we were. Am I making it cycle all the way through, or am I in competition with another, am I doing something wrong? I'm seeing everything fly all over the place, but now we've got a thing that says 4-week mini courses. Okay. And everybody can see it. 4-week mini courses, TAD 4-week mini courses. All right, I'm going to spend about an hour, more or less, depending on what kind of questions you have, to talk about 4. Let's make a little color change here. Let's make a blue mark. We've got 4 separate 4-week mini courses that will begin in March. Those of you who are on my email list who heard that these were full 16-week courses, well, we're going to begin by doing overviews first. That is, instead of going the full 16 weeks, give you a 4-week overview of each course, and they will be linear perspective, anatomy, human and animal, composition, and visual storytelling, and I'll take maybe 10 minutes apiece to explain what we'll cover in each one of these, and then show you slides of what students have done and give you a chance to ask questions. Let's begin with linear perspective. I put this one first because it is so foundational that it used to be, for the last 600 years or so, that if a person were going to learn how to make a picture, if they were going to learn classic drawing skills, they would learn how to draw boxes and cylinders and spheres and turn them into objects or rooms or human heads or anything their heart desired. And in a 4-week overview of linear perspective, the first thing that we'll deal with in one 3-hour session is how perspective works. The picture plane and plan projection. Now, in the next minute, I'm going to give you an explanation of what those words mean that will, if you aren't already familiar with it, just confuse you, but it may also impress you. When we look at the world, we look at the world through a sort of window in front of our face. We call that a picture plane. And everything out there in the deep world can be drawn on this window the way you would draw the houses across the street on the window with a grease pencil. And once you know that, you can then do a down view. A line like this. Sorry for my shaky line, but at least I got a line in there. And say this is a box, and we're looking straight down on that box, and you are over here. Here is your head, here is your nose, here are your feet sticking out down there, and there are little points on this box that will send laser beams of light to your eye, and they will intersect. That means that they will go through the glass right about here and here and here and here. And then if you were to take this piece of glass that we're looking straight down on, this picture plane, we're looking straight down on it, and flip it down so that we could see it as a full window, then we would see that that square would be in perspective. Aha! That is an elaborate procedure that I'll take about an hour to explain how it's done. You can find it in books, but it's nice to have somebody walk you through it so that you'll see that anything you put over here, including another person who is standing there and pointing to you, they could have little dots on them too if you wanted to, but gosh, that would take, oh, excuse me, those should go to that guy's eye. That would take a long time to do all that. The plan projection method of perspective is what I call, and other people call it, instrumental perspective. What it means is that you use straight edges, and you're very careful with your lines, and you take a long time and you plot out points like an architect would do to figure out how anything looks. All I will do is show you how it's done, and then we will move to something more important for your classic drawing skills, and that is to simplify form. What it means is that instead of seeing a human head as a complex bunch of planes, which it is a complex bunch of planes, and when you see how professionals understand those planes and know how to place one ear that might be this big over here, and they'd know where the other ear would be coming out over on the other side. The way that's done is to see the complex form first as a simple form that can be placed, sorry, gosh, this is awkward, that can be placed where if you know that there is one eye there, there is the other eye there, the ear that's over here, we'd be able to find that ear over on the other side and know where it was. We'd be able to find that chin on there and find that cheek over there and connect some dots to get the complex form gradually by building it out of simple form. Now, rather than do this awkward drawing, I'm going to show you better examples of it in a few moments. But the secret to mastering perspective, I would call it the proven path in 25 years of teaching it, is to learn a few simple forms, which are the cube, the cylinder, and the sphere. Because if you can draw the cube, the cylinder, and the sphere. In any position, you can draw pretty much anything in any position. Last thing we're going to deal with is a process of how once we know this stuff, we don't start careful. We start bold. We don't begin with finicky vanishing points. To draw a box well, you can place a vanishing point here and place a vanishing point there and put a horizon line between there and draw a box, or you can just start with a something that you say, that's kind of it, and then you find a corner and gradually hone this thing down, keeping the vanishing points and that horizon line in mind. But it's like a sculptor. You don't start finically, you start roughly and gradually hone it down. Now, let me, rather than drawing awkwardly, show you an example. This is a student in the perspective class learning to draw a cube with circles on it. And not only draw the cube, but spin the cube. And when you can spin that cube and then start carving into the cube or pulling things out of the cube, extruding forms, you can pretty much build any kind of a contraption you want. And the culmination of this in a full semester of perspective would be a project like design your dream studio. If you had $20 million to build a dream studio, what would it look like? And don't have to build anything first, we'll draw it first. And so students design their dream studio and draw it on paper with pencil so that it's whatever they choose it to be. There is an example. This is a tough thing to do. Drawing a circle and then saying, I want to look up at the circle. So I'll put an equator and putting an equator around that circle, which means that I'll see the South Pole right there, and the North Pole would be on the other side. And then to say that there is a North to South Pole line that will go through until it comes out over onto the other side. And then there's also a North to South Pole line 90 degrees over on the other side like that. And to get all those lines accurate is something that you can't master unless you're extraordinary in a matter of 4 weeks. But I will explain the logic behind it so that you'll get kind of an idea and maybe get toward this direction. But this is not so that we can put lines on a ball. This is so that if we have a complex room like this, we can handle all those parts. Look what Bernard put in here. Let me get a black pencil. Look, Bernard put a spiral staircase in there. A spiral staircase is a challenging task. Of course, you could build a spiral staircase. You could take a photograph of it and you could trace over it, but I wouldn't recommend it, especially when you can learn to draw a cylinder. And you can say within that cylinder, there are going to be so many steps. And you might, find a center line in the middle of that cylinder and measure how many steps there will be. And then you would look down at the top of that cylinder and say there will be this many divisions as it goes around for each revolution. And then you would drop those points down and you do an elaborate connecting the dots, a series of connecting the dots to make it so that these steps would gradually go up and go around. That is a formidable task. But if you can do this, you've learned more than you need to do that. And so when Bernard does his studio, he can put just about any form in there he wants. He could have a child swimming in this pool. Am I moving I'm trying to use the pointer. Let's see if I can do it again. My tech help might be able to help me. I'm trying to use the pointer, but I'm actually wiggling the picture around. Is there anything I can do to keep that from happening so that the hand tool doesn't come in? Just the pointer? Oh, it looks like you've done it for me now.
Marshall, just click. Yeah, just click on where you want to point.
Oh, okay. So I can't wiggle it?
You can't wiggle it. You have to click on the points that you want to hit.
Okay. Oh, yeah, now I can wiggle it. I had to turn off the hand. Okay. We could put a child in there and have that child swimming around and splashing and knowing how those ripples would come out. And if the splashes came out and bounced and they were to fit into a sort of a, let's see if I can do it, they were to splash out and come out in a sort of a fountain of splashes, we'd know how to do that because that's a three-dimensional form that we would boil down to something simple and then gradually make it more complex. So John Neumeister did this. He put himself a nice little spiral staircase in there. He worked out the planes and the curves and the stairs and built his kind of frugal for a $20 million budget, but there it is. And Caitlin in one semester did this with her spiral stairs and her curved couch. And this is the ability to do something that artists have had for a few hundred years, where if you've got an idea for something that exists in three-dimensional space and you want to draw it, you can sit down and on a restaurant napkin, sketch it out. So here's the objective of the course. It will teach you how master artists draw complex objects and environments from imagination in different positions without needing to copy. Okay. I have another little round of slides to show you on this, and I can go right into them, but I'm going to watch the chat and see if there's any questions. I mean, I'm not done with the linear perspective slides. I've got more. But since I've been talking for 10 minutes and feeling a little bit like I'd like to know whether it all made sense so far, I'm going to stop for a moment. Everything makes sense. Good. So far, so good. Yes, it makes sense. Okay. Well, then should I carry through? Let's do it. Let's go back to this. Let's go back to the point of learning cubes, because I have occasionally come across a person who says, you know, I want to draw complex stuff. I want to draw realistic looking stuff. I want to draw animals and cameras and sewing machines and grasshoppers. I want to draw a man standing with a pet bear. And you're having me draw a cube. Why am I just drawing a cube? Let me show you why. Because if you can draw that cube out of your imagination and spin it in any position, well, if you wanted to draw a camera like Nathan did, and you could draw it this simple, watch this, watch this, watch this. If you can draw it that simple and you can spin a cube, Doesn't it make sense? Doesn't it make sense that you could spin that as well? And if you can spin that and then pack the details into it the way Matthew Cook did, well, it just seems to me like an artist who can do that could draw that thing from any position he or she desired. So, got a grasshopper, and it's understood as a bunch of little forms, cylinders, cubes. In case you're wondering what this is, this line right here, why is it not showing up? Let's try it again. Well, the pointer is showing up, isn't it? If the pointer's showing up, that's good enough. Do you guys see the pointer? Yeah, okay, good. That line right there is a height line. It's like a line on a cube that would just be the Y line, the line that goes up and down. This one would be a width line. That's a line that goes left to right, and then there'd also be a line that goes back, the depth line. Well, those three lines are the lines that those are the only kind of lines you find here. Those are the only kind of lines that are on the corners of that cube. And so when Casey Miller is trying to figure out how to draw a grasshopper so that he understands all the form, he's using perspective to draw an organic form. And likewise in doing this gorilla skeleton. And likewise, oh gosh, what an incredible job. Look at that. Yves just did a remarkable Smilodon skeleton from the Page Museum in Los Angeles, and understood it. He looked at it and understood it as if he were building this thing. When you see this line, that little arrow saying that this foot is facing directly forward, and then you see that this one is facing to the animal's left, and that he didn't just line them all up. He can say this one is back here and this one is over here. But he has total control over these lines because he relates them back to the simple form of the cube. That is classic linear perspective. That may be the skeleton of an animal that would rip your belly open and eat you if you had been wandering around Los Angeles a few score thousand years ago. But what we see is a draftsperson's interpretation of it to give him control. Now, I don't want you to get the impression that this is the way that professional artists begin a drawing. This is a skill. This is a discipline, a thing that you practice to understand, to solve problems, so that if you have a photograph of something where the head is facing in a different direction or facing away from you, and you want to change the position, you could place the box in a position that is different from the photograph. Let's see if we can get that back. Getting a little confused here. I guess I'll just have to point. Different from the photograph, and then put the details on. But take a look down here. You see a little creature down here. That is the way that most artists begin their drawings. They start freely, fearlessly, sketchily, unconcerned with details. But even this has lines on it that if I were to, let's see if we can do this. when I was just throwing that in there, I was thinking that there was a width line that went across there like that, and a depth line that goes down there like that, and a height line that goes like that. So that if this thing has one eye there, we know where to find the other eye on the other side. And if one nostril flares there, the other one will flare there across that X line. And that we can change the shape of those forms and pull them out one way and find the plane breaks that go on. That is all perspective applied to anatomy. You get the idea. So, if we were to watch Frank Frazetta draw this, he may have done some rough pencil work underneath those pin lines. Or he may not have. At some points, he might have just taken the rollerball pin or the ballpoint pin or whatever he was using and just start scrawling all over the place. But can you see, now that you've sat through me talking for 20 minutes, can you see that even to draw this man, he is aware, as much as he claimed that he didn't know perspective, he is aware that we are looking up at a box like this, and that when we draw that head, we are looking up at a ball like that, and that we see underneath that chin, and that ear will be down low, as opposed to if we had done the same thing and decided we wanted to look down on this guy, in which case the nose would be down there and we would not see underneath the chin. We would see the top of the head, like so. Okay. That's my little presentation on what we will cover in the linear perspective class. And we've left out the fact that when Frank Frazetta did this, he knew that that arm had a deltoid, and that arm has a bicep in there, and that arm has a tricep at the back, and that arm has supinators that go out like that, and that arm has a group of flexors that come down into that wrist, and that arm has a wrist that goes like that, and a hand that grips that thing tightly. That is another discipline. That is anatomy, and that's what we'll get to next, unless there are questions about linear perspective. Feel free. Good stuff to keep in mind as an animator. My perspective drawing isn't very good, but I've always tried to keep some of those basic principles in mind while animating. You are wise. How far should I go up this chat? Remember these from the Intro to Animal Anatomy video. You sure do. You've watched the Intro to Animal Anatomy video.
Marshall, I think we have more people typing at the same time. We're going to have a few questions in here in just a second.
Got it. I'll try to get to the big claim for the class. Where was the big claim for the class? There's the big claim for the class. Look at me still talking when there's science to do. Okay. 3D modeling really helps me see the shapes when I draw. Well, am I the only one who started drawing cubes right now? Also good for critiquing others, helping understand how to make their drawings tighter. This helps a ton when you think something is off. Or Abraham Lyokin, it helps a ton when you think something is off, or problem-solving stuff. I remember when I was sharing my studio with my beloved friend John Dickinson, and we were trying to learn to draw heads, and we were looking at all the illustrators who had portraits of celebrities in the workbook and the American Showcase and the Directory of Illustration, and we saw how so few of them could exaggerate a head and make it so that it looked like it was anatomically sound. It always looked like if they exaggerated anything, the head turned into silly putty. Sometimes even when they were trying to do it realistically and not exaggerate it, it looked off. And it was a few years before we discovered how often an artist simply runs an X line, runs a width line from the corner of one eye to the other, and knows that that is the width line of the head. It certainly works when you draw a head from the front, that you have a vertical line like that and a horizontal line like that, and that if the ear is going to be on that horizontal, it's going to all be symmetrical. So when you put it into space like this, it makes sense that that line would stay. Sorry, I'm so uncoordinated to try. I can't get it to match. And that if that ear is going to be there, the other one's going to be on that same line system. It's a great trick. Should you always start with cylinder spheres, basic shapes when drawings, or should you just have an idea how to apply the fundamental up to the artist? What's best? Every artist is different, but what I mentioned about Frank Frazetta is the point. Every artist starts differently, and it's not a good idea. In my view, it is not a good idea to start too carefully. It's like the novelist who tries to write a great novel and spends 6 months on the first page. That's not the way a novelist works. You tend to get an overview of the whole story and maybe work for a few months on that. Some novelists just start at the beginning and type all the way through, but even they have a rule, which is that you don't stop and get finicky. You go through a burp of a first draft, and then later go back in and refine. But I'm going to deal with this a little bit later today and talking about the creative process. But no, I don't think that it is wise. It is wise to train yourself in those tools. But there are other ways to start. You start like a child, freely and fearlessly, and then you gradually turn into a grown-up where you fix the problems. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if you were to expect a child to speak perfect sentences at first? It is the experimenting around that gradually goes into honing that is the natural process. And it's not just that way in your training, it's that way in an individual drawing. You usually start with many options and be willing to embrace lots of false starts. And then when you say, I think we've got a good direction here, hone it down. I hope that answers your question. Juan Carlos Barquette says, Zachary, Marshall made me draw so many cubes that I ended up just doing more dimensional sketches instinctively. Good point. Okay. Any other questions about perspective? I mean, we're doing this in 4 weeks. There we are. Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. If you're saying, yeah, but, this is the time to mention it. If you got a question about, yeah, but. Roberto Bustos Jr. speaks wisdom to all. If you were to draw 1,000 cubes for a year, let alone thousands and thousands, but 1,000 is a finite number. If I have you for a full semester, I make you draw 100, a couple hundred that you've got to turn in, 20 perfect ones, and they're done freehand, not with instruments. The whole point is to train your ability to see those X, Y, and Z lines. Well, it's like a pianist or any musician learning to play a scale. You do not want, when you are playing the Mozart sonata, to have to think, now what's the next note? Is it A flat? You want to know those scales, and then when you hear the tune, you say, oh, I can do that, and what is Mozart? But the scales with notes left out. This is, what do we got here? What do we got here? We've got the process. Look up here at the screen if I can do this. We've got the process of how to draw, rough to finish. That comes at the end. Shouldn't that come at the beginning? Shouldn't the first thing be sketching to refining? No. We start with the most slow motion, meticulous understanding of how perspective works. Then we say we need something simpler to master. The thing we need that is simpler is a group of forms, cubes, cylinders, and spheres. And when we know enough about those to put them in any position, then we just rough stuff out and gradually refine. Okay, what else have we got here? Okay, any other questions? How did that happen? There we are. Are we ready to move on to anatomy? Okay. Now, just watch the screen and you'll have the treat. You know how when you've said something, it's nice to review what you've said? Instead of saying anything, just put your eyes on the screen and watch. You're going to see this really cool. There you are, 600 years of wisdom. 600 years of wisdom rocketed through in 9 slides. Okay. Now, the next thing. Once you know perspective, you might want to know how to apply it to bodies. And when you look at this famous drawing of a stark naked man from 500 years ago, and you know something about anatomy, well, that line right there is a line of the separation between the tibia and the gastrocnemius and the soleus. Da Vinci knows this line and understands it. He knows what these little hatch lines are. Those are tendons. He knows this little line right here is the tendon of the hallucis longus, and that this is the back border of the extensor digitorum brevis. This is an anatomically knowledgeable drawing. He knows what these little bumps are. He knows that that is a deltoid that squashes up a little more as you move it up. He knows what the delineation between this part of the tricep and that part of the bicep is. That is a knowledge of anatomy. And in the anatomy course, which is, I'm going to do something that's going to be really intense, we're going to fit human and animal anatomy into one 4-week course. Here's how we'll do it. We'll start with the human bones, because skeletons don't stretch. They stay hard. And if we have the skeleton as foundation, you say, what does that mean? Why would I want to just know the human bones? Well, here's why. When this athlete is in that position, his skeleton all stays rigid, whereas this upper arm, the bicep on that upper arm is a very different shape than this bicep because muscles change shape. So we start with hard architecture. And if you can draw a skeleton as simple form in one position, and then spin it around without having to have the model spin around, you just know how to draw this in this position and then change it and that change it. That's manageable. That can be learned in half a year. And as Egel did here, choosing a model in one position and drawing a model in another position very simply. The skeleton is the foundation, but it isn't the end of it. We then put muscles on the form, and I want to show you just this last semester. Just this last semester, I had a student who did this so well. He's using a photograph here. He analyzes the skeleton as form, as boxes. And then he figures out where the origin, that's where a muscle starts, and the insertion, that's where a muscle ends, is on all of this, and is able to understand why the bumps on these surface forms are what they are, because they are formed by anatomy. Can you see, I ask you, can you see that this is a valuable skill? That what Jarek has done here in drawing that skeleton with the wheels of the femur, those condyles of the femur as wheels, and making this foot look like it's coming toward us, and the other one is going off to our right and further back, even though it's a flat screen. There's no depth on that screen, but he gives us the illusion of depth, and then is able to put those muscles on there. Oh, that's beautiful. Beautifully done. That is a skill that will allow you to invent skeletons if you choose to, or interpret models who are in front of you if you want to work from the live model, and know that that knee is not a bag of marbles, but that knee is a patella and a condyle and a fibula and a tibial tuberosity, and that there are straps going to it. And this means that you could exaggerate. And that gets us to another thing. We're learning to do, we're going to look at how this can be managed. Trying to draw a full photographic, realistic character like this out of imagination is pretty much impossible, but this is possible. And then this is another step. And then, of course, to learn how to place light on form, like you would do in Dorian Iten's class, means that you have moved many steps toward the impossible. Let's go back to this. We go from human bones and human muscles to animal bones and animal muscles. And again, the emphasis will not just be seeing the surfaces, but the forms. So let me show you a few more slides, and then we'll open it up for questions. Here we have a side view of a cat. Let's see if I can draw. Let's see if I can get a pencil and a nice light line and do a little drawing here. We could say that, oh, didn't get my nice light line. Let's try it again. There we go. A nice light line. We've got a rib cage. We've got a spine. Why is it showing up where it's showing up? We've got, let me get out of this and start again. See if that, no, still doing it. Okay. We've got a pelvis in there. We have an upper leg bone, a femur, a lower leg bone, a tibia and a fibula, an ankle, a set of whatever this animal has, whether it's paws or hooves. And wow, my lines are not landing where I want them to land at all, but I'll just keep apologizing. Now, if I learn how to draw this animal from the side, I could at least draw it so that that leg could go back as a cat's leg might go back. And this other one could come out here as a cat's forearm might come out there. But I'm limited to a side view. Well, if I'm limited to a side view, wouldn't it be nice if I could do that like a 3D program does? I could pull the camera back and show it from a little above and behind, and pull the camera up higher so I'm really looking down on it, or swing the camera around so I'm seeing a 3/4 view. You know what I'm going to say, don't you? You know what I'm going to say. The secret to this is the ability to draw a box in this position, and then to know that if that box is in this position and that this head would fit in a box, oops, gosh, just crazy lines. In this position, and then we would have something in there that would be three-dimensional. And we would have a pelvis back there that would be tipped back on an axis where we would know that this leg would be there. Now watch this, watch this. The leg over on the other side, we'd know where that thing would go to. And look how I placed, I'm making it bright green. Look how I placed that other foot over there. I did that because this line, that is that width line, told me that that would happen. We are going to learn animal skeletons so that we could place the box in any position. And the secret to this, according to the 3D program, is to turn it into something like that. But look how many lines there are. Doggone it, that would take forever. But we don't want to take forever. That's too complex a perspective to begin with. That helps the 3D program make it look like it was photographed, even though it wasn't. And we're aiming for something at about this complexity, because that's enough. Those are animal bones, and if I want to put animal muscles on them, see if I can do it here, if I can get a better color. If I wanted to say that there is a tricep that will go from there to there, and a set of quadriceps that will go from there to there, and there may be a flap of skin in there, there's going to be a, oh, I'm sorry, wrong leg. That's the leg on the other side. We're going to be able to put those muscles on there, a set of hamstrings that go from there to there, and then gastrocnemius, it's going to go from there to there, and that little area in there. We're going to have the knowledge to place those muscle groups and be able to invent and also know how things squash and stretch as they do squash and stretch as an animal moves. But all this knowing the bones and knowing the muscles as simple forms is so that if you can draw it in one position, as I did from this creature at the Natural History Museum, and then you decide that you want to swivel around and draw it from another position without going over there to look, these are skills that allow you to invent. This is something you can do with a human too. When Egil did this, he's got a photograph of the model. If he turns her into manageable forms, he can then move the eye up and up further to look down on this without having any reference. And if he can see this athlete as simple forms, he can move down and look up without having to have anything to copy. So here's the claim for the course. In 4 weeks, I cannot teach you how to master human and animal figures from imagination in any position, realistic or exaggerated. But in 4 weeks, I can teach you how master artists do it and walk you through enough steps to where if you had to go to a desert island with just what you got out of the 4 weeks, you'd at least know how it's done, and you could spend the next year on that desert island solving all the problems on your own. Okay. Hey, I'm going to show you just a few more examples. Because I make this claim. This course will teach you how master artists draw human and animal figures from imagination in any position, realistic or exaggerated. I've been showing you realistic examples. One of our students, first semester I taught this at TAD, Subroto, in the course where I was teaching anatomy, halfway through the semester, we made up our own exaggerated male and female figures. And here's what he did. Can you tell that he's doing this with a knowledge of bones and muscles? Those were the finished line drawings. These were preliminaries. I guess this is to say that anatomy is not just for figure artists who draw realistic figures like Michelangelo and Da Vinci. Anatomy is for cartoonists who want to make these absurd exaggerations have a little thickness to them. Subroto, you make me proud. Cody doing the same kind of thing, inventing these figures, coming up with them, and working with what he learned in perspective about simplifying form and what he learned in anatomy, which is knowing there's a rib cage under those muscles and you can feel it. There are shoulder blades under there and you can feel how they make plane breaks. There are bones under the flesh. That's a tough order. That's something that takes several months of serious study, maybe a year. But we start simple by looking at figures and trying to reduce them to forms. And even those forms, look at those legs. Look at the knowledge of the individual bones that you can't even tell. You can't tell where that fibula is in there, but you know that it starts there and it ends there. But that's too much to start with. This is a little simpler. Turn it into a robot because a robot's simpler to draw. And if you're beginning, you wouldn't even start that complex. Look how many forms are in that hand. If you're a beginner, I'd say start like this. See how simple a mannequin you can turn a body into. And once you've mastered the simple part, the smaller parts are the same things. It's just more simple forms on smaller levels. Okay, I am done explaining the anatomy class, unless there are questions. I am watching. See, which course is a good place to start? I would start with perspective, Kelsey, because anatomy, when you take anatomy with me, where I'm going to be teaching you how to turn it into forms, it is so nice to already know the forms. The reason a person might want to jump in to anatomy is that anatomy seems more fun. It's a human body. Human bodies are fun. but it's a little like jumping into dessert, and you need the nutrition of that meal, and you're going to fill yourself up on something. Or maybe that's not the best analogy, but I recommend perspective first, which may seem so dry and so technical and so boring, but it makes you so strong. Will the anatomy class show where the fat deposits are formed on the body? Well, take a look at what we've got up on the screen. Do you know how much work it is to fit the human bones into one session and to fit the human muscles into one session? Next, you're going to be asking me about hair. I can tell you hair is a complete unnecessary thing in drawing in life when you're trying to get the big forms. I can show you the resources. Elliot Goldfinger's book has the best resource I know of where the fat deposits happen on men and women. It's different. And he's got a chart. And he shows you from the front and the side and the back. And so, yes, I can point you in the directions of things. But when we have 3 hours to cover all the human muscles, I might make a point that there are fat deposits underneath that tensor of the fascia lata that on a woman go down a little lower. But no, I'm not going to be able to walk you through all that. Our time will be too precious. Somebody's working on my side. Somebody's helping me. Somebody's moving things around to try to make it so I could actually use that pointer. And how would
Marshall, that was me. I'm sorry. I was trying to rearrange my screen to see things better, but I didn't realize I was going to rearrange yours.
I'm trying to make it so that what Dorian showed me I could do, which is I could use that pointer without making the picture wobble around. And there's just got to be a way to do that, where each slide is fixed somehow, and that you scroll through it with the buttons in the lower left, and that I could use the green pointer and not wobble the picture around. I'd love to do that. Question, how would you recommend to work with an anatomy book? Oh, Sergey. I would recommend that if you're going to study anatomy from books, if you had to have just one book, I'd recommend Stephen Peck's, because he has anatomy and form in there. But the main way I recommend anatomy is to have more than one book. George Bridgman's book is a very difficult book. It's a great book, but it's very difficult. I don't recommend it to beginners. David Rubin's is good for beginners, but it'll only teach you anatomy. It won't teach you how to draw. So here's what I'm going to recommend. Go to my website and read my book reviews. Not now, because you got me here right now. But when you have a moment, go there, and there's a little link at the top. Actually, when you have a half hour. Because I've got enough, if you go to reviews, little link that says reviews, there is a section on anatomy. And if you read what I have to say there, that'll save me the time of just repeating it right now. Mary asks, will the info from your old perspective videos, that's the 1994 ones that are viable, can one skip this perspective course to the anatomy class? Yes, you could, Mary. The difference is that we would be in 4 live classes together. So that you can say, Marshall, I've watched that one on the placement of the ellipses 16 times, and I still don't understand it. And then I can say, let's see how you're doing it. And you'll show me, I'll say, Mary, here it is. You read the book, but you needed to show the doctor where it hurt. The advantage is that I'll be giving you feedback. You'll have assignments, and you'll be getting feedback. Okay, take another minute for questions, if you've got them, and if not, we're going to move on to the next big topic, which is it could be a complete shift of gears. Apart from the 4 weeks mini course, we are working on that, Jose. We are working on that to make it so that these are overviews, that if you took them to a desert island, you'd have enough to at least know what to do. And then doing a remaining 12 weeks where you could carry through with the specific assignments that are going to be more detailed. The fine tuning. Oh, Stephanie, welcome back. Okay, no other questions? Then let us move to, let's get back to that picture. Hey, look at this. Look at that picture at the left. I'm sorry not to credit the photographers. These are pictures that students got off the internet to work from for their analyses. And we should get in the habit of crediting photographers. And if you know who this photographer is, please let me know so that when I show these slides in the future, I can credit these photographers. But look at that picture at the left. It's a great picture. And it's not a great picture because it has forms like this in it. It's a great picture because it's a real moment of incredible strength and speed. It's exciting to see. It's also interesting that we've got two different teams, one green, one blue with red socks. We've got them in sharp focus as fast as they're moving. We've got a background of people that are blurred and all flattened out back there. We've got an incredible series of shapes that have a sense of movement in itself. As a design, it's a chaotic design. It's violent design. Everything's in turmoil. We are now calling our attention away from technical matters, away from measurable things like cylinders and boxes and the positions that they are in space. We are now moving our attention toward what makes a picture worth looking at. We do not look at a picture and say, this is a great picture. All the forms are properly placed. We look at a picture because it excites us, or scares us, or amuses us, or gives us some feeling. When N.C. Wyeth chose to make this picture of his children and a friend of theirs on a beach looking up at the giant in the distance, he chose to place the camera there. And down low, so the giant is big, he could get the camera down even lower and make the kids look bigger. Put the camera right down there at Anne's feet and look up, and they'd be big, and the giant would get smaller on the distant horizon. He could have put the camera from the side. He could have chosen to do this with a different color scheme. He could have rendered the giant so that the giant was as contrasty as the kids and made the kids soft contrast. But he didn't. He chose to do it that way. And Bill Elder, when he did this for Harvey Kurtzman's writing in a Popeye satire, chose to put Tarzan back here and Popeye in the foreground, and also treat it with a different style. It's what we'd call a cartoon. And we would call this more realistic painting, more rendered. Well, we have moved away from technical concerns to creative concerns. You see, anatomy and perspective are objective. They can be measured. We can say that they are right or they are wrong. But when it comes to composition, composition is not objective. It cannot be measured or deemed correct or incorrect. Composition is subjective. That means it could be done many different ways, all good. It could be done many ways poorly. Say, that can drive you crazy. How do you teach composition? How do you learn composition? How do you judge composition? Well, if composition weren't subjective, it wouldn't be creative. There is the ability to hit the right notes at the right time, which is a technical concern for a musician. But there is also the fact that one musician says the tune should go this way, and another musician says the tune should go this way. And if the other musician's tune is the one that everybody hums, that means it was a more successful composition. And the way we learn composition, which is how to arrange and make choices in a picture, whether to make things bigger or smaller, whether to make them darker or lighter, whether to put them at the top or below, whether to leave them out altogether or to bring in a chicken. It's choices. And the best way to learn it is to study great masters. You see, great masters are the grown-ups. And when we're learning composition, we are the kids. And there are risks of studying great masters, is that you'll just do the same thing the great master was done, but there is no more efficient way to get good at any skill than to watch how the grown-up does it, if they do it well, and say, I think I can do that. And then you are forging the path. The first week will be the role of composition in art, the value of it. It is the most important part of making a picture engaging to an audience. We will learn from the masters, and I'm going to go over these quickly and then show you pictures, because pictures will make the point better. We will talk about how the most important thing about composition is not the names of the objects in the picture, like dragon or house or dog or girl. The most important thing about composition is to see it as shapes and values and colors and basic design elements. And that is way, way, way harder than you think when you've spent years looking at pictures and saying, it's a tree, it's a front yard, it's a funny animal. It's kicking into another mode and seeing it as an abstract design and saying, this design rocks. Here is the best I can do to explain. A song has lyrics, and that's what the song is about. As far as the audience is concerned, he's singing about his broken heart. They're singing about their adventure. But the song cannot rely on the lyrics, or it's just a poem. If the song is good, it will have a melody and rhythm and harmonies that we say, oh, I like that. That is the composition of the music. And the picture maker cares about the composition of the picture without the lyrics. We're going to talk about how all composition is basically seeking similarities and arranging differences. Similarities give unity to a picture. There are rhymes. It's like rhythm in music, where you get the same beat enough to where you can anticipate it, and a melody that repeats, and a key that stays consistent long enough for us to know what the melody is. Whereas differences are how a song has a verse and a chorus, and then a bridge. And if it's got a big boom at the end, it might be preceded by some soft parts. Whether you're composing music or stories or pictures, similarities and differences are the basic unity and diversity principles. Now let's look at pictures. This course will teach you how great masters evoke feeling through their work, not with subject matter, but with design. Here we have a picture by a great composer. Do you want to know of some great masters of picture-making composition? Goya goes up into the top dozen or so. There are so many, it's hard to limit it to a dozen, but Goya is a great master of light and dark. And I want you to look at this picture. It's a man about to be killed. The subject matter is obvious. What is less obvious is that he has chosen to light this perhaps much like he saw it, with darkness all around and little hard flashes of blinding light and shapes that look broken and chaotic and big patches of value. The picture feels, as an abstract design, like something serious and intense is going on. This is not a lullaby. This is heavy rock. When we compare that image to this one by Frank Frazetta, we have a man here who is enraged. And he's talking about getting a mob together. And yet when we look at it, we know that it's not that serious. This is an issue of style, but it relates to composition because the artist chooses to treat it one way or another. In fact, the same artist, Frazetta on the left and Frazetta on the right, gives us two completely different sets of mood by keeping one light and safely outlined and another with dramatic darkened light and lost edges. This is the difference between one design and another on a subliminal level affecting our feelings. Now, the cartoon on the left, Bill Watterson, is keeping it as light as it can be. Still got sharp edges. Calvin's a little snot. It's not as friendly as Mickey Mouse. When you have hair that's spiked like that, that gives a little feeling, but the whole thing feels light. On the right, we've got something that is still a cartoon, but because the forms are more realistic, it's more serious looking. Those are choices. Can you imagine if Dave Gibbons had illustrated Watchmen the way Bill Watterson illustrates Calvin and Hobbes, or if Calvin and Hobbes had been illustrated the way Dave Gibbons illustrated Watchmen? These are artistic choices, choosing to make a yellow background with a slash of red, and by subordinating all this area down here and holding the values together so it doesn't pop out, this pops out more. This piece on the right has a lot in common with the one on the left. Very similar in many ways, and yet a very different feeling, flatter space, more decorative, a bit more like a table placement. It's just a different feeling. And here's as extreme as we can get. Same subject matter. Each one is a guy with a gun in a suit with some kind of apparatus on his face to let him see or breathe. One chooses to make it a full realistic world, and one chooses to turn it into the simplest graphic symbols possible. But now here's my final point about this. Craig Mullins is no less concerned with the flat shapes and the placement of this dark against this light and this little patch of light against this less light. Craig Mullins is no less concerned with that in this picture than Tim Sale is in this one. It's just that the viewer may not be thinking about that because they see something more realistic. But an artist who is composing cares about where those lights and darks and warms and cools and brights and dulls and bigs and smalls and sharps and softs are, because those are basic design elements. This was a American Illustrator's series of postage stamps years ago. Isn't it great that when you put them down at postage stamp size, they all rock? This is one of the ways that we learn composition, but I'm going to stop for a moment. I've been talking a long time. Any questions about what I've said so far? I'm going to go back to the Craig Mullins gunbooks. A benefit of beat feedback. Marshall, in an artist's learning path, at what point would you insert composition? I've seen designers recommending stand composition before even learning to draw. Lorenzo, I'm with that. Composition is something that children do instinctively. In fact, some children do great compositions because they just go with their feelings, which is the most important. Hey, if you don't have money to take the class, let me tell you how you compose. I'll give you in one sentence all that composition is about. Anyone who makes it more complex than this is wrong. You ready? Composition is making the picture and saying, no, that's not quite, a little, oh, yeah, that's better. Oh, no, it's not quite right. Ooh, yeah, that's good. I like it that way. That is all it can be. Of course, other things come into it. The art director likes it a different way, and so you have to conform. But when you are composing, all it is saying yes and no. And if the rule of thirds or the golden mean or any of those things work for you, there may come a point where you say, no, it doesn't work for me. I like it better shifted a little this way. Children do this anyway. It's when we tap into, do we like it, that we're tapping into the part where we're going to find our talent. But of course, we may like it and it sucks, which is why we feed our sensibilities on great stuff. And then we heighten our sensitivity to whether it's working. Now, back to the answer to your question, Lorenzo. I think that learning composition as young as you can learn is great, and even before you know perspective, because there are some great artists, great composers who don't know perspective and don't know anatomy. I begin with Van Gogh. Van Gogh did not know perspective and he did not know anatomy, but he was one of the greatest artists in history. He was the expressionist before there were expressionists, because his brilliance was in his composition. There's a woodcut artist named Joseph Wackel. Let me write it down so that you can, if you want to look this guy up. This guy was an incredible artist and not well known, but didn't have control of his perspective and anatomy. He didn't need it. Look at the picture on the right. That's a powerful picture. And, you know, how much perspective and anatomy is in there? The problem with teaching it, Lorenzo, is that it's an opposite way of thinking from perspective and anatomy. And I have had students who are taking them both saying it's really hard to make the shift. I don't know, I'm trying to think, what am I supposed to be doing? They are opposite ways of thinking, but they are complementary, and ultimately we want to get them back together. So I think that if you're going to start with if you have the opportunity, I'd start with perspective and composition, and the reason is that you'd be exposed right away that there are boys and girls. There are people of this ethnicity and that ethnicity. There is up and down. There is here and there. There are two opposite ways that things come out, and artists care about that. Can you name some of your favorite masters to study for composition and color, which I tend to have trouble with? I'd put Winslow Homer is one of the ones who, over the years, I didn't care for his work, and he's one of my favorite now. Winslow Homer, John Singer Sargent, N.C. Wyeth, those are ones I use a lot. Rembrandt was one of the greatest composers in history, but His stuff is so subtle. Same with Degas. These are people who work so subtly that it's hard to learn composition from them without a teacher. But here's what I would recommend. Take the class. I'll introduce you to a bunch of them. Roberto, I learned how to draw correctly before I studied good composition, and it screwed me. I'm still trying to learn basic good composition as well. I often do correct bad drawings. Yes, I know. I have the same problem. That's why I recommend, if you can, to exercise the left and the right arms simultaneously, rather than spending 6 months exercising your right arm and then spend 6 months exercising your left arm and getting out of balance. Would you start with the big shapes and make sure the Oh, good question. How do you pronounce that name? Andres? Good question. Let's answer this question. I've got slides. Andres, I'm hoping I'm saying your name right. Let's hear the question. Would you start with the big shapes and make sure the comp works before you start refining? Watch this. Beautiful little pictures. Many of them are big oil paintings. They work as little postage stamps. Now watch. Andrew Loomis, whom I should have credited on this, but let me write the name in here. Sorry, the name isn't on the slide. Andrew Loomis has one of the best books on picture making I know of. It's Creative Illustration. It's not the best book on composition, but it's a good book on composition. It's sound. It's just not the best. Mully Bang's book, which is on my website. Go to my website, and I'll give you my composition book reviews. But look at this. Look what Andrew Loomis is showing us here. This is from his book, Creative Illustration. He's showing that when you concern yourself with a complex picture, look at this. We got a lot of stuff going on in these pictures. It would be to your advantage to see how simply you can reduce them to have control over the big choices. Letters, simple shapes, symbols. Simpler is better so that you have control. It's the same thing with draftsmanship and anatomy, except now we're talking not about the structure of the body, we're talking about the structure of the picture. One of the hardest things in the world to do is simplify. I mean to simplify well. So in studying composition, here's where one begins. How can you reduce the picture down to something so simple that you can look at a postage stamp of it and say, yeah, good design. Arthur Rackham does these wonderful illustrations. He's one of my favorite. I would not recommend him as the first person you go to study composition, though, because it could confuse you. But Fred Gettings, in his book, divided Rackham's compositions into, I think, 6 or 7 different kinds that he used over and over. This is the strong vertical, where you got a vertical that's going through, a strong vertical going through, a strong vertical going through there that divides the composition or anchors it. And to look at one of his pieces and to reduce it to this is a different piece that I don't have up here. See, here's the anchor the action on the side and let the interlacing shapes vignette. Anchor it on the side, anchor it on the side, anchor it on the side. And to take one of those and do a little postage stamp size analysis of it is a way to study the masters and rehearse what they do. Here's what we do in class. Teaching composition at TAD, we would put up a beautiful piece like this Jules Breton. And then the students spend 10 minutes to 15 minutes trying to copy that picture the size of a postage stamp, where you have to leave out all detail. Watch this. Watch this. Put your eyes up on the screen. If you're doing something else, watch this. If you have 10 minutes to reduce it, some people will get creative with color. I don't know what's going on there. But you see, you don't have that much time, so you've got to look at the big moves. Now, we would do that with many a masterpiece. That was a Breton. This is in NC Wyeth. See, there's no time. Actually, I think that's just an out-of-focus version of this. Yeah, that is. I put an out-of-focus version on there because sometimes when you shrink it down and throw it out of focus, it helps. Helps you to see the pattern. And so we have students that are trying to turn that into the simplest things they can. That is a way to study composition. So that instead of taking the symphony and learning every note, you say it's divided into 4 parts. First part is the masculine theme. Second part is the feminine theme. Fourth part is where the masculine and feminine theme go, each have their own space. The fourth part is where they overlap and intertwine. Now you understand a very simple fact about Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, and you can use that if you're composing pieces in 4 parts. Look what we do with these do re's. This student, oh gosh, I didn't credit this student. This student did an excellent job, and if you're here, tell us it was you. This is a student who's taking a do re masterpiece and limiting it to black and white. Don't even get any gray in there. How much simpler can you can't limit it to black, and you can't limit it to white. You got to at least have black and white. So if you just have black and white, how do you do it? These were very good attempts. Now watch the screen. Watch the screen. We've got that, and then we've got Jama doing this for his own original pieces and making it so that the design, the composition of this piece is a rocking design, and then he gradually goes in and puts in the details. Jama was there, I think, the first or second semester I was teaching this, and he was just unbelievably talented. It's like he'd been studying this for 150 years on his own, and he was only, I think, in his late or early 20s or so, I'm not sure. He was in Tajikistan. He couldn't even be at the class online because they had an electricity curfew in Tajikistan. So I hardly ever got to interact with him. But look at this. Here he's doing a little abstract design. Looks like 2 people skiing. Here he's turning it into something else. Now watch the screen. He decided, well, why not take the same design and do a whole other scene about it by just changing the values around. Woo! This is someone who ran. He picked the fire up and ran with it. Give him 20 minutes of theory and watch him run and do this. I stand back like a coach watching an athlete on the field doing things that when I was a mere prat, I imagined doing things like that on the field. And this piece makes the point because it's such an abstract design anyway. But you see, Jama, if he chooses to put more detail in and knows light on form, look at that. Doesn't even care that much about light on form. That's basically an overcast sort of almost cartoon kind of color choices, but done in a somber and realistic way. What a beautiful piece of composition. What great instincts. I am knocked out. This is why I'm a teacher, by the way, is that there comes a point where you start to see students who are so remarkable that you find your role as the one who is a coach for those students. And Jama is a great example of this. Now, that's Jama, one of our TAD students in the composition class. Here are great French masters. And look at the variety of styles there. Look at the different feel that is based on the lack of color and based on the complementary colors and based on the big flat patches of dark color and then light, dark cools and light warms. And the willingness to put black in there and white in there and the unwillingness to put black and white in there because of the desire for a softer feeling. Composition is about making an abstract design that feels like a biscuit, or like sherbet ice cream, or like black licorice, or a hot fudge sundae, and yet these are choices of color and placement that give the piece an emotional aroma. And we will study for 4 weeks a crash course in composition, and we will learn from masters, and not only learn from masterpieces, but we will learn from the words of masters themselves, because many a master. Drew, when he gave me quotes to promote my teaching, said, how could I not like Marshall's classes when most of what he teaches he took from me? But Drew talked quite a bit in a workshop about how he composes, and really opened my eyes to some of the stuff that just ended up going into this course. And he's a great composer. And he learned, incidentally, Drew learned a lot about how to paint and compose and draw from this master 2 generations previous. Okay. I'm done with the talk about composition. Let's see if we've got any questions here. That was an answer to your question, Andres. Yes, big things first. Telka, I've been in one of Marshall's composition courses before, and the things he points out will blow your mind. Good. This reminds me of James Kearney's Little Thumbnails of Landscapes. Yes, thumbnails are working out composition things while it's not that expensive to do. Okay, I know I'm going on longer than I thought I was going on. I've been almost an hour and a half, and I've got one more presentation. How are you guys doing? Oh yeah, Edgar Payne indeed is what should be on that list. Should we have more questions, or should I just go through? I can go through visual storytelling. I could limit myself to 10 minutes, and I could make all the points I need to make. How are we doing?
That'd be perfect.
Do we need
Marshall.
a break?
Go ahead.
Just go ahead? Okay. Here we go. All right,
No,
that was
finish with that, and then we'll take then we'll go kind of have a transition time during the portfolio reviews.
okay. There we are. This course will teach you how great masters evoke feeling through their work, not with subject matter, but with design. Leonardo da Vinci said the beauty of a drawing is in the composition, and we're going to spend 4 weeks talking about that and giving you assignments that will make it so that when you're not in class with me, we're only meeting once a week, but I'm going to give you enough to where if you wanted to spend 20 to 30 hours doing homework, I'm going to try to make it so that you would have 20 to 30 hours well invested in developing your sensitivity and your skills. Okay, now let's move to, let's see. Oh, by the way, that was a placard for composition color. One of our students, Egil Thompson, did such beautiful work in the composition. This is somebody who's just not even a year and a half into TAD. What beautiful work. He did, we used it as a placard. He did 2 of these that we used as placards. Okay, visual storytelling. And let me catch my breath here. I'm getting tired of my own voice, and I just need to sip some water and breathe. Many people going into the visual arts have a core interest, especially when they're going into entertainment art. It's different if you want to be a gallery artist. But if you're going into entertainment art, chances are you've got a love of story. Cartoons, comic books, animation, film, graphic novels. If you have a story, or if you have stories that you want to work on, I've done what I can to take a class that I've taught for the better part of 50 at least 45 semesters that I've taught it in colleges and 4 or 5 times at TAD to boil this course down to 4 weeks. Let me tell you what they're about. Week number 1 is about story ideas and how to gather material. Well, you may already have material. Say, I've got several story ideas. You'd still get a lot out of this. The business on how to gather material is not going to be lessons from me so much as it is going to be lessons from some of the greatest storytellers who have ever lived about where they get their ideas. Or, to put it briefly, week 1 is going to be a smash course, crash course in the first stage of the creative process. Week 2 will carry through with it. It will be lessons from great masters of character creation, from actors and directors and writers, about how to create characters. And then week 3 will be how to put them together. I'll give you a little hint about week 1. The secret is to pour out material and to gather material uncritically. The worst thing you can do when you are in the beginning stages is to be critical. You do not spank a baby. You gather ideas to see whether they hold promise over time. With characters, there's a little twist to this. It's the same thing with characters, but there's a little twist to it. If you're not a professional storyteller, you still talk about characters every day. When do you talk about when do you write? When do you do character creation and write characters in your day-to-day life? I'm going to watch the chat and see if anybody can answer this. It's something that everybody does. I'm watching the chat. It's jokes. Yes, jokes are part of it, but let's get a little bit more controversial than jokes. It's yes, when we talk about what we did and when we talk about other people. Gossip. We may try to make our gossip accurate, but at some point, it's somebody that we're excited about or somebody that we're pissed off at or somebody that we've got feelings about, and we will start to color the story to create that person as a character who is this way. When we are creating characters and there's no limitations because we can create them out of our imagination, essentially, it's talking about somebody who's worth talking about, and we're going to make them more worth talking about. We can invent their traits. But we can do this and gather so much material that we can't turn it into a story. Week 3 is to switch into grown-up mode. This is childhood imaginary friend mode. If you ever watched a child improvise a story, they don't stop to think. They can just make it up and run with it. They'll have imaginary friends and they'll have fact after fact after fact about the imaginary friend, and they just come to them while they're speaking. But then we move into grown-up mode, which is to say that if I'm going to tell this story well, I don't want to constantly start and stop and say, oh, I forgot to tell you. Oh, I should have mentioned this. This is where the craft of weaving a yarn and planning out the ideas and putting them in order and choosing which ideas are best. Classic story structure, unity and variety, plants and payoffs, pointers and payoffs, subplots that interweave with main plots. The technical craft of weaving a yarn, which is in fact very creative because there are so many compositional choices that happen in here. And then finally, turning it into images. Visual story at its core is in common with oral storytelling and novel writing. But it is a whole different animal. The fewer words, the better. the power of images to get into people's consciousness and affect them for the rest of their lives. And we live at the end of a century where visual storytelling was the medium. When film came in and comics and animation, very few people read as much as they watch movies and television and read comic books for that matter. It's because visual storytelling is powerful in its own right. And we will be talking about visuals during this and this and this, but the final week is about the unique power of making it visual to the point where we could tell it well and leave all the words out. Okay, here's how the class, if I have a whole semester with you, here's what we would take the time to do. We would take the time to design characters, and you can take the time in a 4-week class to design some characters. And these are pretty well-designed characters, and they're pretty developed, and you might say, I don't think I can design characters that well, but we're looking at Subroto, who did just, he was advanced and competent. But you see, if he's going to do a Little Nemo and Slumberland story, he's going to design the king and Nemo and Flip and the princess and the Thug 3 and the Thug 2 and the Thug 1, who aren't not in the original Little Nemos, but those are his own invented characters. And then, if the finished pages, comic book pages, look like this, as some of the students in the visual storytelling class, look at what Caitlin did. She did just marvelous 4-page Nemos. She might have done more than 4 pages. But I want to show you how this happens. Here is Gabriella's final 4 pages of a project. A Little Nemo in Slumberland, based on an old comic that I'll tell you about in about 10 minutes as we finish. But it's her own original story idea. Those are her final 4 pages, inked and ready to go. But that is not the way one starts. If you were to start your story up in this panel and then draw these panels, that would be a very, very bad way to create. Some people do it. Some even get away with it. But it's a very bad way to train yourself. Here's the way Gabriella did it. Before she did this and worked out every panel to make sure that it made the point clearly and that there's thumbnails to make sure the order of these pictures are going to do everything they can do. That was before finishing. But before she did this, she did lots of this. That's not even readable. Well, it's good that it's not readable, because this is throwaway. This is trying to figure out how she should tell it. And if she says, no, that's not right, then she tries it again. And she says, no, that's not right. And then she tries it again and makes some decisions about how to change things. So we went from finished back to the stage of less finished, back to the stage of very rough. And before very rough, she even worked it out as 4 pages that are composed like good literature. And also she did character designs to see how these characters are going to look. Okay, what I've showed you is the stages. Let's look at one other example. Egil Thompson, whom I admire deeply. It was a privilege to teach Egil. He came up with some ideas for his Nemo character. That's character design. Ideas for his Flip. Ideas for the mermaid and the mer-king or the sea king, whatever this was, Triton, I'm not sure who the character was, but those are character designs. And of course, these are the result of many little sketches that he says, I think I like this one. And he did thumbnails and preparation, and then he pretty much got it done. It's pretty much decided there, but notice that it's rough. Now watch this. He went from there. The decisions are made. The rehearsal has been done. It's a dress rehearsal, and now the actual performance. And he did a nice 4-page Little Nemo in Slumberland. And there's pretty much the application of perspective and composition and character design and story crafting and knowing how to manage ideas and assemble ideas and work in stages until he's got a finished set of 4 pages that worked. Isn't that nice? Okay. In case you're wondering what I've been talking about, Egil doing a Little Nemo story 100 and some years ago, 1905. Gosh, we're talking about 108, 109 years ago. This man did a comic called Little Nemo in Slumberland. This was the year that the first movie theater was built. People had seen movies in vaudeville, but movies were not a part of people's experience. And of course, color movies were another 30 years away. He did these one-page wonders that, for all their flaws, there's a number of embarrassing things about these, but these are such masterpieces of cinematic storytelling before there was such a term as cinematic storytelling, that I use these as an example in almost every visual storytelling class I teach. The way if you were teaching a songwriting class, you would use the Beatles. For all their flaws, they wrote songs that have dominated the last 50 years of pop music sensibilities, and that are great songs. And these, for all their flaws, are just great visual storytelling for graphic novel, comic book format. And I'm very, very, very sorry about the movie. It looked great. It really captured a lot of the Winsor McCay look, but gosh, what a movie. What a waste of a movie. This course will teach you how writers, filmmakers, and graphic novelists create characters, stories, and images that involve and satisfy an audience. 4 sessions is not much time to cover this much ground. But if you take the course, we will not waste time. We will learn from movies. We will learn from episodes of The Simpsons. We will learn from Little Nemo Slumberland. We will learn from your favorite movies. I will assign movies. If you take this class and you only meet 1 Thursday a week with me for 4 weeks, I can give you 5 movies per week to watch that will elaborate on the lessons. Just creating characters right there. I can give you 7 movies so that you could watch 7 movies that week, and they would be specifically to teach you lessons about what we're learning in the creative characters one, and so on. So it's up to you how much time you want to put in it, but we've only got 4 sessions, so I'll fill them with as much material as I'm doing with you right now, where it can be kind of breakneck pace, but it'll make it so that you will come to the well and fill up the buckets and then drink it through the week. Okay, I am done unless there are questions about these 4-week mini courses, the 4-week mini courses. And there is a list of them, and I'll wait to hear what we do next. Zachary is a playwright, and he reads classic literature. Oh, Roberto, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So you learned? George Harriman, Bill Watterson, Chris Ware, but they're all so different. But I love George Harriman's stuff is hard on most people. It's just hard to get it. But what great pacing. Gosh, what a sense of you read them out loud and they're like music.
Well, Marshall, do you think we should move on to the portfolio reviews, or are we going to have, do you think there'll be any other questions here? And I'll encourage everybody to, if you have a question, go ahead and ask it now.
Yeah, if you got a
related
question
to-
about the
to what Marshall's
classes,
been
ask it
talking
now
about.
so that we can get that out of the way. And we got one, how long is a given class? They're 3 hours each. And they are 5 to 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you're on the West Coast, I'm in Southern California, they'll be 3 to 5 or 3 to 6 p.m., which is the time that the trash truck comes around on Tuesdays. So that means during the anatomy class, you get to hear the Laguna Niguel trash truck. It's kind of fun.
Marshall, thank you for that great explanation. I think that there was a wonderful explanation of the classes, a wonderful explanation of the material. And I think everybody can see how passionate you are about each of the topics. And it was really fun to listen from my perspective, taking from a kind of, I come from a different background, a different point of view of, I'm one of those artists that don't know that much about perspective, don't know that much about the academic approach of anatomy, although I teach drawing in a different way, more of an observational way. And that's another interesting aspect of the art department. We come at you from a lot of different directions. We have artists like somebody I'm going to introduce in just a second, John Foster, who is very innovative with his design, very innovative with the approach of his picture making. And I was listening to Marshall's explanation on design, and it aligns very much with what John talks about, the search, the journey of finding something that, you may start with something that is a constraint of something that is something from the thirds, the golden means, or whatever. But you take it somewhere and you make it your own. It's a search, and I really like to approach from our students to have multiple points of view in everything that we do. And information is great. Good information is great, and it's how you apply it. And having different points of view and letting the students choose what direction they want to go with is I think very important. So it looks like
Yeah.
there are some questions that are coming up in the chat, and if somebody would want to Marshall,
Yes,
I don't know if we can answer all of these right
They
now.
are available on demand. If you can't make it live, they are available on demand. And these are 4-week classes, not 16. Those of you who got an email from me, I told you they were full 16-week courses. But that is not the case. They are 4 weeks. They're running Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Monday is perspective. Tuesday is anatomy. Wednesday is composition. Thursday is visual storytelling, and that will go for 4 weeks. So they'll be all in March, starting the first week of March. But yes, if you register for the class, they will be available on demand.
And yeah, absolutely. It's a big part of what we do, and one of the things of on demand is being able to watch them multiple times. You will have them to see again, and again, and there's a huge benefit to that. I think we really should keep moving here. I want to go to do something that I was attempting to do at the beginning, and Will or Dorian, whoever's here, I wanted to just basically say, and I think you can see how intelligent Marshall is, how passionate he is about what he does. And and I kind of wanted to start the talk with offering why we did this, why we put this together, and that is our and it goes back to our mission statement. The art department's mission is to make a positive impact on our students' lives. by preparing them for an art and design career through our educational products. Products designed that allow attendees the best opportunity for success. And that's what we're really trying to do. We're trying to give you accurate current information from the industry that allows you to develop yourself and develop a career as an artist. So we have a film that I think most of you may have seen this. I have no idea, but this really does embody of what we're trying to do.
Traditional art school education is broken. Tuition prices are outrageous, the delivery is antiquated, and the information doesn't come from the industry. The art department was designed as an alternative to offer the best opportunity for our students to develop careers in the arts.
We've embraced this notion of technology moving the arts forward.
It's going to have everything you could ever need, anything you could ever ask for and more.
You introduce the idea of a brick and mortar school that's a hybrid of brick and mortar and online. All of a sudden you start to get the best of both worlds.
I have the webcam on, I'm using traditional materials.
I can summon up all of these other aspects of teaching that I'm never capable of doing in a classroom because I don't have those facilities on me.
It makes no sense that 7 of the 10 most expensive schools in the country are art schools. TAD's tuition is affordable. It was established by the salaries that come from within the industry.
I can now teach from wherever I want. Students can take classes from wherever they want. I can work over student artwork in real time.
Students are able to ask questions right then and there about what I'm doing.
It's a whole new world of education, and I feel a lot better about the way I teach now.
We wanted to bring industry to the students, and because of the lack of distance, we can get the best practitioners in the world to teach our classes.
Each teacher that's teaching actually works in the field. I'm still currently working in my field.
It was the best school that I could find that would equip me for a career in art.
These people are the cream of the crop of their industry, and they're currently working. I'm not going to a school where my anatomy teacher is the best teacher who happens to be teaching anatomy in that city, in that region. They can get an anatomy teacher from anywhere.
I do believe that people come out and they're going to be kicking ass. They'll be doing well.
It shortens the gap between student and professional.
Having these great teachers really puts the students in such a better place to succeed in what they want to do.
You know, you're not getting 5-year-old information. You're getting information that's exactly what's happening right then.
The ability to talk to somebody that's been in the business for 20, 30 years, that has directed, that has character designed, that has animated on feature films, not only feature films, but some of the best feature films ever done, would have been just incredible.
But I'm going to suggest to everybody that on March 1st, we're going to be doing a day of portfolio reviews. I'm also going to one more time put into the chat, I think I am, yes, that they can visit and look at Marshall's new classes coming up and take a look at the scheduling and all the details about the classes. And I'm reading the chat here. This was worth staying up all night. Thank you, Marshall Vandruff and the rest of the art department for the lecture. Really appreciate the nice hanging out with you guys in the chat. Thank you very much. I hope that these lectures show people how smart these great picture makers are. These really good artists and really good teachers. But if anybody wants to have a conversation with me or reach anybody at the art department, please reach out and see if we can help you with your educational needs, help you, making decisions on career decisions, whatever it might be. That's what we do with the art department, and that's what the school was designed for, and that's what our the path that we set our students on, creating careers.